Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, this morning, the Biden administration announced they are taking action to counter the Chinese Communist Party's threat to our national security. Just a few moments ago, the Department of Commerce said they would formally add Wuhan-based YMTC and 35 other Chinese companies to the so-called entity list, blocking them from purchasing critical technology from American businesses. I'm glad this decision has finally arrived, because I've long sounded the alarm on the economic and national security threats posed by YMTC and other CCP-backed technology companies like CXMT and SMIC. YMTC poses an immediate threat to our national security. So the Biden administration needed to act swiftly to prevent YMTC from gaining even an inch of military or economic advantage. I'm glad they're heeding our calls, as well as calls from other members on both sides of the aisle. Of course, YMTC is a well-known chip supplier for Huawei, one of the biggest companies that pose a risk to U.S. security interests. Any supplier of Huawei is no friend to the United States because the risks are too great and the entanglements of these companies with the CCP and the Chinese military are too treacherous. So this was a necessary and prudent step by the administration. The administration's announcement also comes on the heels of my amendment with Senator Cornyn to the National Defense Act that would remove YMTC as well as SMIC and CXMT from our federal supply chains entirely. It's a one-two punch, The administration blacklists these companies from doing business, and then here in Congress, we will shut them out even further from U.S. supply chains. Of course, this is about more than just a single group of businesses stretching their tentacles into our country. It's about holding firm against a CCP that has become more emboldened and oppressive over the recent years. The 21st century will be largely shaped by our two giant economies. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has cheated their way to the top by piggybacking off American technologies and American IP, with huge implications for our security and for our edge in AI, cybersecurity, telecom, and other major technologies. Whoever masters the technologies of tomorrow will be able to reshape the world in their image this century. And if the CCP gets there first, it will spell dark times for democracy, for freedom, and for American prosperity and American jobs. Today's decision by the administration, will provide one more firewall we all need to keep the CCP's authoritarian designs in check. I applaud the administration for taking this important step. Now on CR, the Omni, and the NDAA. Last night, the House of Representatives passed a one-week continuing resolution that will keep the government open long enough for us to pass a bipartisan year-long omnibus. Negotiations keep trending in the right direction, but we still have a lot of work left to do and not enough time to do it, unless we extend government funding for another week. Let me put it a different way. As of this morning, the Senate will now require consent from both parties if we want to pass a CR before funding runs out tomorrow at midnight. We should move quickly to avert a shutdown today, without any unwelcome brouhaha that has caused shutdowns in years past. Democrats are ready to act at a moment's notice, and I hope Republicans will stand ready too. Both sides are going to spend the day working on an agreement to get the week-long CR done. We should have no drama, no gridlock, and no delay on passing a week-long CR. Just remember, those who demand something happen and risk shutting down the government almost always lose. Let me say that again. No drama, no gridlock, no delay. That's the recipe right now for avoiding a shutdown within the next 48 hours, and I'm very hopeful we'll get that done with time to spare. For the last 2 years, the 117th Congress hasn't had a single government shutdown, not one, not even for a day. I hope we don't start now, just as we approach the finish line. Recent history shows that those who risk shutdowns with hopes of scoring political points ultimately lose in the end. Now, once we pass the CR, we can make progress towards an omnibus. I've said it time and time again that a year-long omnibus is the best and most balanced option to fund our government. An omnibus is the best approach because it will ensure that our kids, our veterans, our small businesses, and our military continue to have full access to vital services and programs they depend on. And an omnibus is the most balanced approach because it would contain priorities both sides want to see: funding for Ukraine, the ECA, the Electoral Count Act, and full implementation of CHIPS and Science, the PACT Act, and more. We worked so hard together on these bills. Let's now work together again to implement them fully. And Mr. President, as we continue negotiating to pass a one-week CR and an Omni, both sides will keep working on an agreement to pass the National Defense Authorization, hopefully today, trying to do it as soon as today. The NDAA has been a consistently bipartisan effort for every year more than 6 decades. I do not expect this year to be any different, and I thank Chairman Reid and all my colleagues for their good work on this bill. I yield the floor and note the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.